Hello and welcome again to Florida Foodie. I'm your host, Lisa Bell, along with our producer, Thomas Mates, who's standing off to the side right now. Hunger and food insecurity is a problem across the country. About 1 in 8 Americans are food insecure, and the number is even higher in Florida. And today we are joined by two people on the forefront of combating this problem in Central Florida. From Second Harvest Food Bank, we are speaking with Dave Krepko, the president and CEO, and Kelly Quintero, the director of advocacy and government relations. So thank you so much for joining us today. This is a huge issue, especially here in Florida and Central Florida, affecting so many people, and we don't even realize how big of a problem it truly is. So first, can you just give me a real general description of the food insecurity issue facing really our country, but also here in Central Florida?
Right. Nationally, there's about 41 million people who are food insecure. It's really staggering. It's hard to believe. And here in Central Florida, in the 6-county area, we have approximately 400 to 500,000 people who are food insecure. And that's about 14%, 15% of our total population. And that represents a lot of kids, 1 in 4 kids, senior citizens, and the bulk of the rest, you have a slice of it that's homelessness, but the bulk of the rest are actually working families. They're underemployed. And
when we say food insecure, what exactly does that mean? Because it's a term that's thrown around an awful lot these days.
Yeah, they're hungry. Basically, it means they don't have the means to have regular access to 3 meals a day that are even close to being nutritious, So, it's a real economic issue.
And I think that that's key, what you just said, being close to being nutritious, because I think a lot of people think, well, wow, it's so easy to go get something for $1 here or $1 there. So why do we have this problem?
Yeah, the problem of food insecurity is, has a lot of different facets to it. The primary thing, it's an economic reason. The funds aren't there, but why aren't the funds there is the next question. So in Central Florida, we are heavily dependent on hospitality. It's wonderful for our economy. It's growing all the time. That's what we want to see. However, there's a huge labor base there that earn very low wages, and they may be working one job, they may be working a couple of jobs just to try to make ends meet. So it's a matter of wages, but combine that with the fact that Orlando ranked last in the top 50 metro areas in the United States for lack of affordable housing. So a lot of these folks are spending 40 to 50% or more on housing to afford a halfway decent 2-bedroom apartment in the Orlando area. If you were making minimum wage at about $8.25 an hour, you'd have to work 110 hours a week.
So you have low wages, high housing costs, and therefore a lot of food insecurity. You've been here for 15 years working with Second Harvest Food Bank. Is the problem getting worse, or are we making some progress?
I wish I could say we're making more progress than we are. It's a lot like pushing a boulder up a hill, though. Just when you think you got some momentum, something else comes up. And I know we'll be talking about that momentarily. But we have seen no let up in the demand for our services. As a matter of fact, last year we distributed a record amount of food, enough for 58 million meals just for Central Florida. And people say, well, the economy's doing good, unemployment's at 3%, how could that possibly be? But it goes back to what I was saying, it's just, there's a lot of folks that are just, do we pay the rent or do we buy food? Do we pay the utilities or pay the rent or buy food or medicine and food? And they're faced with these incredible difficult, there's no right answer to it, trade-offs on a daily basis.
And you just briefly mentioned some of the new challenges that we're facing. Kelly Quintero, you're the Director of Advocacy and Government Relations, and you say over the past 2 years, there have been some dramatic shifts when it comes to how you guys approach your work and your mission. Talk to us about what's been going on the past 2 years.
Absolutely. So when I first started this position, it was very much a conversation around the Farm Bill. And that's the largest piece of legislation that comes across Congress that really addresses hunger and funding for hunger hunger relief programs. So it could be SNAP, which is the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or what we most commonly know as food stamps, but also programs that just come into the food bank. So we also call it government food. So it's staple items that you and I probably have in our pantries. It could be like beans, or it could be green beans or rice, things like that. So all of those items were really being funded through that piece of legislation. So about a year and a half, that was the conversation we had with our congressional members. Thankfully, that did pass without any alerting kind of policies attached to it. However, after it passed, we quickly met the shutdown, which affected a host of federal workers that were furloughed, specifically those TSA workers. And we actually went out to the international airport to help them out, the Sanford one and the Melbourne one, because they just couldn't make ends meet and they needed food. So we coupled that with also proposed rules that the administration is coming out with to add more either work requirements that we saw. That was one of the first ones, an additional restriction and hurdle for individuals that have the residency, and now trying to prohibit them from getting food assistance that they or their family may need. And now what we're seeing is, and this is going to sound so boring, but it's broad-based categorical eligibility. I'll just call it broad-based from here on out. But that really affects not just families, but seniors, veterans, and really children in our public schools.
So what do you mean by that? What does that mean?
So that means essentially it's a piece of policy that means that if you sign up for SNAP, then you're eligible.
Which are like food stamps.
Food stamps, exactly. If you're eligible for those food stamps, then you're eligible and automatically enrolled in other programs that you're eligible for. But on top of that as well, it allows states to have a certain amount of flexibility. So let's say, for example, the state of Florida is having really high unemployment, but the Georgia is having really low unemployment for whatever reason. So that the state of Florida would be able to adjust the threshold for that poverty level. So those individuals who can't find a job or can't find a second job, unfortunately, or, whatever, then they're able to qualify for that assistance.
Have you already seen some of those changes take place and have effect on people, or is this all still kind of in the proposal, working out the details stage?
It's still a proposal, and per federal requirement, there's a 60-day public comment period. And so we're mostly concerned because every meal that we, as Second Harvest and food banks like ours, put out into the community, SNAP puts out the equivalent of 9 meals. So we cannot at all meet that additional need that's going to come from those individuals who will no longer qualify for SNAP.
So what can we do to help combat this? Is there something that the average person can do to help combat food insecurity among their neighbors and their coworkers and their community?
For sure. There's a number of things. One immediate thing that you can do, Kelly just talked about this comment period. And the majority of the general public has not talked to an elected official. And, how do we contact them? Who are they? What do we say? Those kinds of things. Well, our call to action specifically would be to talk to your members of Congress. And if you don't know who they are or what their phone number is or what their email address is, or writing a letter to them or what's in that letter, you can go to our website, www.feedhopenow.org. And we have that on the website to make it easy for you. These legislators, these elected officials need to know what's going on, at the ground level. They have a myriad of issues that are bombarding them. So the more calls, the more letters, the more emails, the more tweets that they get, the more attention they're going to pay to that. So that's one immediate thing. The other thing folks can do to help combat this food insecurity issue is we need volunteers. We can't do our work without volunteers. So corporate groups, faith-based groups, individuals, students, you name it. we welcome one and all, and we make it a real productive experience, and even have some fun with it. And then people can donate food, of course. And the third way, really, or fourth way, is financial donations. And some folks go, okay, if I donate financially, how far does that money really go? And it's a very good question. A question should be asked all the time before you donate. We're proud to say at Second Harvest Food Bank, for every dollar donated to us, we distribute $9 worth of groceries. So if we could get that return in the stock market, right. Everybody would be multimillionaires, and we could get rid of this problem. The other thing, in terms of the financial efficiency of our organization, is that our financial auditors that come in once a year give us an efficiency ratio. So we are at a 97% efficiency ratio, which means that 97 cents of every dollar coming into us is going to help people.
Well, it's amazing to me how food insecurity really is just part of this huge overall puzzle. I mean, you touched on it briefly. You have low wages, tourism-based economy, a lot of people not making a lot of money in our area. In addition, in combination with extremely high housing prices, that's where this comes into play. But what I love about Second Harvest is you don't just distribute food, but you also are working with many of your clients to help them break that cycle. Right. So tell me about some of the programs. I know we had some people on earlier on Florida Foodie talking about the Culinary Institute you guys have, but I mean, you have a brand new facility and you offer a lot of really innovative techniques to try and help people break this cycle.
Right. We break our work down into two basic categories: feeding the line of people, and you need to do that daily. The kids need it to be focused, on their schoolwork and get the homework done and be energetic. The seniors need it to stay vital, health, from a health point of view. So we need to do that day in and day out. These people have a legitimate need. But then we have a second piece of our work is called shortening the line of people. Why do they need food in the first place? So our shortening the line work is the culinary training and job placement, where to date, 280 to 300 graduates, we place them into jobs at graduation. We have a 100% job placement rate. They're not flipping burgers.
How long have you been doing this, that program?
This is our 6th year.
Okay.
And it's literally changing lives. And these folks can now put food on their tables, and they are economically self-sufficient.
They're becoming chefs at many restaurants that people who may be listening to this have been to.
Yeah, for sure. And some have started their own food companies, like a catering company, a cupcake factory, you name it. The stories are just really wonderful. So we said, what else could we do? So we run this 100,000 square foot food distribution center. So we're doing the same thing. We are doing food distribution center training. So we bring in low-income folks, provide forklift certification, inventory control, materials handling, order picking, all that stuff, and then place them into distribution centers.
And I know you guys have also partnered with a lot of people, which helps make this process run. Tell me about some of the partnerships that you guys have with other local organizations or businesses or restaurants that help makes this all possible.
Yeah, one partner, and maybe the general public's not too familiar with them, but they should be, is called Career Source. And they are in the Central Florida region, throughout the state as well. But their main focus is to put people into jobs. So it's a wonderful partnership. They have the people coming to them. We have the program. And then on the other flip side of it, in your partnership question, is the employers. So Darden restaurants, their brands, Disney properties. I mean, imagine Epcot Center, the amount of extra food they have at the end of the day. All these convention hotels, lots of independent restaurants as well. So it's just.
Can you get that food? I mean, you just mentioned, all the waste.
Prepared.
There's so much food waste. It's something like 40% of the food in our country is just thrown away. So, I mean, is there any way to reduce that and help your cause?
Wow.
That's a huge issue.
Well, definitely. If they don't, if they don't reduce it, it's helping our cause because there's more surplus food. But we can pick up perishable and prepared foods. Those prepared foods, they have not been served.
Right.
Okay. But they haven't been served for one reason or another. They're perfectly okay. But our drivers are trained in safe food handling. We got refrigerated trucks.
So that is some of what you guys do. You pick up.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're picking up, start with where it's grown, right from the farmers and the growers in the state of Florida. We're in this phenomenal agricultural state, to the food manufacturers, the food processors, distributors, grocery retailers, Publix, Sam's, Walmart, Super Target, Winn-Dixie. We're picking up from 400 grocery stores twice a week.
What are you picking up?
We're picking up everything that you see as you walk down the aisles, from fruits and vegetables, that are still edible, but they're a little on the ripe side, but they're edible. We're picking up dairy products. This is really cool. The fresh meats and poultry in the refrigerated cases, when those are coming up on expiration or are new shipments coming through and they have to make room for that, the grocery stores are freezing that meat and poultry for us. And then we can then take it in that frozen state. And then we're getting, just a variety of non-perishable goods, from cereal to peanut butter to jelly. I mean, macaroni, cheese, you name it. So
but it's still
it's
not
edible.
It is. Yeah, it's edible, but still, with all that, there's still a need for more.
There is. I said we provided enough food for 58 million meals last year. We need at least 3 times as much.
Wow.
And that's a conservative estimate. It is hard to believe, and especially your viewers that are listening to this right now are probably scratching their head going, how is that possible?
Yeah. And so talk about the distribution process, because you can imagine, 50 million people coming to your place to get a meal every once in a while.
Thank goodness they're not doing that. Yeah. We wouldn't have time to sit here in the studio. So what we do is, our system works where we gather all the surplus food into our distribution center, and then charitable feeding programs come in and get the food from us. So we're serving up about 600 through the Central Florida area, and they range from homeless shelters, soup kitchens, homes for abused women and children, to hundreds of emergency food pantries. So people that are not only preparing meals, but people that are handing out non-perishable goods. So it's this network that is just phenomenal, and that is they are backbone partners with us. They then take that food and take it to their particular mission or ministry, and feed the individual people their needs. So it's a system that works. The food industry likes it because they don't have time to vet thousands of people or hundreds of organizations. So it's a very efficient way to go about it.
So Kelly, what is the biggest challenge, legislatively speaking or government speaking, moving forward that you see and that you're going to be working on?
Yeah, so it's besides the broad-based issue, I would say coming up is the child nutrition reauthorization. So that includes funding for all WIC program, which is women, infants, and children. It also includes funding for school breakfast, school lunch, and it includes funding for one other program that are after school programs and summer meal programs. So those are all programs that we pretty much participate in, every single one of those, with the exception of probably WIC and maybe in-school meals.
Are you concerned they could be cut?
Absolutely. Because this piece of legislation includes all the funding for it and all the regulation around it, it's how can we make sure that this piece of legislation includes funding to appropriately fund all these programs, so we're feeding all the kids that need meals from us, especially after school. And again, during summer, how can we make sure that we work with those school systems to advocate on their behalf and for these kids?
And what do you see as the biggest challenge in the next few years?
Well, public policy is one of the biggest levers you can pull to make a difference, no matter what the issue might be, whether it's healthcare or wages, whatever the issue might be. In terms of agricultural policy and these nutritional programs that have been funded for decades in America, we see an administration right now that is not too kind to those policies, and they are under attack on a continual basis. Believe me, we believe in wealth. It doesn't, without wealth, our organization wouldn't exist. There's phenomenal people that will donate, but we talk about a greater divide between people at the 1% and 2% areas and people on the lower income. That divide is becoming bigger and bigger with a lot of public policy. And there's another rule that's been proposed recently. It's called the public charge rule. There's another government term for you, but basically that public charge means someone applying for immigration legally and legitimately, that if they receive a certain number of public benefits, it can count against them of becoming a U.S. citizen. And right now, the new proposed rule is to add SNAP benefits to that. So SNAP, as a public benefit that a legitimate U.S. citizen is entitled to, is proposed to become a wedge. That food insecurity could actually be a wedge in becoming a U.S. citizen. So that has entered into the picture. So, it's one of the biggest challenges. The second one that I'd like to mention is that, and it's a great opportunity, thanks for having us on the show, is that a lot of folks, you're busy putting bread on the table at home and busy with your kids in school now that school season started and everything. You're focused in your own world, but there are just so many folks out there that are not in a fortunate situation. And again, we've got a lot of sunshine here and a lot of good things going in Orlando, but right beneath the surface, there's a lot of folks there that are in need. And
you mentioned earlier, many of the people who are in need are working, and they just don't have the means. Right. And that's, I think a lot of people think, well, go get a job. Why can't you afford food? Exactly.
And a lot of the population don't realize who is really hungry, And if you don't know that, your imagination gets filled with these stereotypes that are out there, like you mentioned. But when you think about food stamps or SNAP, almost 50% of the people who benefit from SNAP are kids. 20% are seniors and people with disabilities, okay? And then, like we mentioned before, the bulk of the remainder are people that are working. And in SNAP, the S stands for supplemental, okay? Nobody can survive on food stamps or SNAP dollars. Yeah.
Well, thank you guys so much for joining us and removing the curtain behind Second Harvest Food Bank and giving us a little insight into what you guys do and all the services you provide. We really appreciate it. We know you do a ton of good work in our community. So Dave Krupko, Kelly Quintero, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you for listening to Florida Foodie. We'd also like to thank our guests, Dave Krupko and Kelly Quintero from Second Harvest Food Bank. You can learn more about Second Harvest efforts online at feedhopenow.org. Be sure to follow Lisa Bell online as well. Search Lisa Bell News on Facebook and Instagram or Lisa Bell News 6 on Twitter. You can also find her new children's book online at normangnomebooks.com and by searching Norman Gnome Books on Facebook and Instagram. Also, a big thank you to our technical producers, Derek Mosier and Ryan Hawley. I'm the show's producer, Thomas Mates. Florida Foodie is available for download wherever you get your podcasts, and we'd really appreciate it if you would take the time to rate and review us. You can also find videos of all of our podcasts on clickorlando.com/podcasts.